Welcome to Casey Cares. We're the voice of Kansas City nonprofits. We share the stories of local nonprofits and the individuals who drive them. At Casey Cares, we connect the nonprofit and the business sectors to enhance the quality of life here in Kansas City for both our residents and our visitors. This Casey Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. We've just closed the door on 2025. And we turn the calendar to a new page in 2026. So what does that mean for nonprofit fundraising? What's in store as we move into this first quarter of the year? On this Ask the Expert episode, we'll dive into the topic with none other than our own Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne. Welcome, Jeffrey, Doctor.
Happy New Year, Ruth. How are you doing? I hope your holidays went well.
They were great, but we're ready to rock and roll into 2026. Hard to believe. It's going to be an election mid-year, midterm. So we've got all that going, but let's take a look. Okay. Fundraising. We start the year anew, correct? Hopefully.
Ruth, I've always said that when I was a director of development for 12 years for a few organizations, that I would go to bed on December 31, happy and content that I had met or exceeded my fundraising goals. And I would get up the next morning with a hangover, not necessarily from drinking too much, but a hangover that I had to do it all over again. So let's talk about what we need to do this year.
Well, you raise a good point. And maybe you can help other directors of development. You do. You have that, I got to push for the end of the year and it's a new year. How do you help frame your mind to then, go for the marathon again? Are there any little tips or secrets you do to keep yourself energized, as you ramp up for that new year?
Yes. Well, I hope that most nonprofit executive directors of development, and their staff were able to take a little breather at the end of the year during the holiday season between Christmas, Hanukkah, and the New Year. Unfortunately, for many nonprofits, it's the time where anywhere from 40 to 60% of the dollars are coming in. So I know in the retail businesses, 60% of the dollars come in the last 2 months of the year. So there is a lot of preparation, end of the year activities that have been done to prepare for 2026. And we hope that you come back refreshed, you're back energized and enthusiastic, and that you can do it better than you did last year with some changes so that you can improve, because you never want to do the same thing every year, because if you do that, you're going to just be stale and you won't grow. So I would hope that some of the activities that we might talk about today will benefit nonprofits as they're thinking through implementing and starting off the new year.
2025 had its bumps. Lots of things for nonprofits to look at. There was stopping of government funding, which was huge for a number of nonprofits. That's still kind of the status quo. You had all the political world, which we don't have to get into the politics of, who's being supported or whatever, but you had that to deal with. So as we go into 2026, what's your insight around that and government funding and dealing with all that crazy?
Sure. Well, I say I don't have a blue or red hat when I'm working with a nonprofit. So, I don't get into partisan politics, nor will we today. However, I would say that you still need to be very close to your elected officials. So whether those elected officials are your local state representative and state senators, they have a lot of influence and impact in the state capitals that might be listening to this podcast. So I would say the number one thing I would do is look up who your state representative is, look up who your state senator is, reach out to them, introduce yourself to them. This is going to be a very busy season for them because it is the start of most legislative sessions across the country and legislatures. But get to know them. Ask them for a tour on either Friday afternoon or Monday morning and show them what you do. Explain what your mission is, and then explain to them what your revenue sources are and how and if the possibility that you could diversify your revenue streams with some public resources that they might be able to grab for you, or competitive grants that you might be eligible for as well. Second thing I would say is you need to talk to your tax advisor or your accountant for your nonprofit, and you need to understand the tax changes that happened in 2025. There was a significant tax difference in the Trump Tax Reduction Act of December of 2017. That was impacted and extended many of those deductions, many of those technical issues, itemization, all those were impacted in 2025 and updated, extended, or changed. So instead of getting into specifics today about those, because not only is the federal law changed, but then many state laws have changed as well. You need to reach out to your accountant and talk to your accountant. Ask the hard questions. Ask what you should be explaining to donors, and then simplify that into donor language and send that out and create a cheat sheet. Create an opportunity or a small 3 or 4 point PowerPoint and provide that to your development committee or to your donors. And you will be providing them a resource versus asking them for something.
Great, great idea. So call that accountant or talk to your financial team at your nonprofit, maybe on your board. You've got someone who's got that expertise. Check it out, because there are some changes, and there's some changes that may benefit you without, going crazy and having to dig down. All right, what else? I'm reading that, looking at personalization is a big thing coming into this new year. Can we talk a little bit about that in dealing with donors?
I think that the more you're able to personalize your mission and explain your causes and explain why you are trying to raise money for the various initiatives, programs, the better it is. However, with artificial intelligence, which we're all learning about, Ruth, I use ChatGPT on a regular basis. I use Google's Gemini as a personal assistant. And both of those AI technologies are available free of charge or for a small fee that you can upgrade the resources that you're able to pull from those two AI programs. So, number one, I would say spend a little time every day working with ChatGPT and or Gemini. Those are my two resources. I know there's Anthropic, and there are dozens of resources out there to utilize. But whatever you utilize, get to know it. Spend about 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes a day. I try to do that every day. And, I'm still old fashioned. I like to write my own letters and I like to write my own reports. However, once I do that, Ruth, I put it into ChatGPT to tighten it up, to ask for specifics, to, create tables or Excel spreadsheets, and also to just help me to find more facts and figures that I can use for projects that we are consulting with. So that would be one area I would say to utilize. Number two, I think you've got to recontact each one of those development committee members or those board members who've been helpful with you in 2025 and just reintroduce the 2026 year and discuss with them what the projects are that you would be working on with them, and ask for their feedback. How did we do in 2025? What should we do to improve in 2026? And then help them understand how you're laying out the solicitation calendar. So, number one, you're personalizing to the volunteers who are your most valued asset. You know, as
Hmm.
I like to say, a third, a third, a third rule. A third of your volunteers don't do anything, but they'll come to your meetings and they'll eat your food and drink your drink. A third will do exactly what you ask, and a third will do more than you've ever asked. So embrace those two-thirds who do exactly what you ask or more. So that's one way of personalizing, at least in creating your own infrastructure through AI and relying on those who have best served you already and who you feel are going to support you and serve you in this year, 2026.
Any kind of warning signs? Or, I mean, I think AI is great, right? But anything you should watch for as a fundraiser in utilizing that to help you?
Well, I don't think that you can. I think you've got to make sure that you are utilizing it in a personal way. So you just can't ask, prompting in AI. I've gone to some seminars in November about how to utilize AI, but prompts and working with your AI source and continuing to refine the way you are asking questions, it gets to know you as you get to know it. So, I think that that is very important that that I utilize it. I thank it when I use it, but I also ask it. I might put a paragraph or two in it and say, please tighten this up, and it'll tighten it up. Then I might ask it for one paragraph to perhaps add some more specificity or facts so that I am not using general hyperbole, but I am using actual facts and figures, or so that I can communicate in a different way and I think a more effective way. I listen to the podcast Scott Galloway. And if you listen to Scott Galloway, he is a machine on facts and figures. And he is one of the most impressive individuals. And I try to emulate him when I am either visiting with a donor or working with a client nonprofit about their fundraising. So I think the more you are able to be specific and you are able to pinpoint exactly points that you want to make or ask questions of donors or AI, the better it will be. The better it will serve you.
I think, too, what's great for the nonprofit community is there are a number of nonprofits that don't have huge budgets to operate on. And you have AI tools that are free and workable. You don't have to buy as they say, the Cadillac versus
Yeah.
the Chevy. Now we'll get hate mail from both. But the point is that it's available, and I think that that's really great, especially when you've been taxed. We're talking with Dr. Philanthropy, Jeffrey Byrne. We're unwrapping kind of how you can move in this first quarter of 2026. What else have you got for us? What else should we be mindful of, paying attention to, and doing?
Well, I think one thing, Ruth, is depending on what type of nonprofit are you a small, medium, or large? Large organizations have lots of tools available to their advancement staff or their executives. So I focus most on small and medium-sized nonprofits that might have a development director, one, or they might have three or four development staff. So,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the small shops that we work with that probably are going to be the listeners to this podcast, those small shops need to create as many resources to help them with their work as possible. So I would say that you need to brush off your plan that you did for 2025, and you need to analyze every aspect. Analyze your annual appeal, analyze your corporate giving program, analyze your foundation outreach, analyze what you were successful with, and excuse me, and what you need to be more, and how you can enhance what you did. Did you create special events in 2025? What worked? What didn't work?
Hmm.
What volunteer structure are you using? How are those volunteers how effective were those volunteers? Who are the new people that need to get involved in your organization? What's the case for support? You know, every year we're in nonprofits, we do the same thing, but we also add new programs and new activities. So, what are those, and how can you package those into a case for support? It doesn't have to be fancy. It does not have to be detailed. It needs to be a little bit about who you are, what you're currently doing, some of the facts and figures about what you're doing, and then what you want to do and what your vision is or what your needs are for 2026. Outline those, put a number down, and then take that number that is required from a philanthropic standpoint and then back into that a fundraising plan so that you are looking at both corporations, foundations, the traditional foundations, and there's so many tools to use to look up foundations and what they're doing. I use ProPublica.org, ProPublica, PUBLICA.org. That is an easy resource. It has on the front page, once you go to it, a little green box that says Nonprofit Explorer. You press that, you can type in volunteer names, you can type in funder names, you can type in foundations, and they'll come up, and then you go to their 990s, and then you can see what those foundations funded probably in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Probably there will not be 2025 reports or tax returns available, but utilize tools like that. That is a free tool. It's easy to use and it's very user friendly. So I collect ideas like that, and I'm happy to share those ideas as well.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We need to provide tools as many as we can for our nonprofits. I was also doing some reading, prepping for the show today, and a couple of different sources were talking about how grassroots energy is outpacing institutional involvement. Are we getting more people at that lower, the very peer-to-peer, to do more of the driving versus, as this report said, institutional? And if so, what does that look like?
Well, I think that grassroots fundraising is very important, but for a lot of nonprofits, they don't really understand how to do it.
Mm,
So I think that you've got to think about how you're going to use your tools in your toolbox. And the
mhm,
tools in the toolbox for development are: what type of social media do you have? What type of Facebook, Instagram? How are you using your website? How are you manipulating your database so that you are targeting messages to different constituent groups? How do you segment? I mean, it's really segmentation. How do you segment your donor base and your prospect base? But I do believe, Ruth, using these tools to energize and communicate is very important. Used to be that social media was used not necessarily for fundraising, but really for communication purposes. I don't agree with that any longer. And I think that you've got to not only continue to utilize social media and your electronic platforms in a proactive manner for communications and for segmentation, but you also can do that for fundraising as well. And you can raise money through social media. It's the way you capture the donor and then the way you categorize it and thank the donor. Many times, small donations like during an emergency or a activity like a massive fire that the Red Cross will be covering in California, or earthquakes or tsunamis. Nonprofits do a lot of fundraising, but they capture small gifts, gifts under $9, $5, $10 gifts. Many times those gifts don't come with good background. So you don't really know who those individuals are who are making those gifts. But do your best to understand how to use that technology, capture that data, and then use that data to reutilize it and in a proactive way for messaging and for fundraising as well. So I think, what we see in fundraising, and you saw that we talked about that earlier in the year of 2025, was that Giving USA is showing us that there are fewer people who are giving to charity, but the large donors are giving more. And volunteer donors have dropped from, in the past 20 years, from about 60% of donors coming from small and medium and small gifts down to about 49%. So we've got to create opportunities for a broader base of donors to give to our nonprofits, or else your donor base and your donors are going to be gone, and you're going to be left with just those large institutional donors who, frankly, have a lot of different competing proposals in front of them. And if your program is so dependent on a few or only institutional funders, then I think you're putting your philanthropic side of your operational budget in peril this year in 2026.
I muted because I wanted to make sure everybody could hear your great advice. This is a good, I think, transfer to talking about diversification of your revenue streams. Is that going to be something in 2026 that more nonprofits really need to take a look at? And how do you really dive into that?
Mm-hmm. We just completed a feasibility study for a nonprofit that we delivered in mid-December. And what we did is we really pulled apart during the feasibility study, we really pulled apart their donor database. And we analyzed it, and then we made recommendations on revenue sources. So we had a revenue source that were current board members. Then we had a line item of past board members. Then we had a line item for donors from 2025 who could, in the past, who could give gifts of $100,000 or more. And the zeros are really irrelevant. I mean, if it's $1,000 or more, where I started my career, where it was $100, that every $100 donation, I'd go out and thank the donor and ask them for $250. And if they gave $250, I'd go out and thank them and ask for $500. So it really doesn't matter what the zero is behind the one. But I think that you've got to think about that. You got to think about what your corporate line item is. You've got to think about what your foundation line item is. Who are the foundations that you were successful with in 2025? What were the programs? What did you ask versus what you got? Also, if you got whatever you got from the foundations, then reposition those requests for 2026. Do you want to ask them for the same project, or do you want to mix it up and ask them for a new project in 2026? Then look at your special event. A lot of organizations have to have a special event. I know when I worked with the Harry Truman Presidential Museum and Library in the late 1990s, we created Wild About Harry, because we knew that we needed a net of $250,000 a year to the bottom line of the Harry Truman Presidential Foundation. Today, in 2026, that bottom line for Wild About Harry, 26 years later, will be over $1 million net. Wow. So, you've got to look at your special events. Some organizations don't need to do special events. And as we've talked about over the years, Ruth, I am the least special event advisor of all time. I don't care to go to special events. I don't put them on, and we don't consult with them. However, we did in this recommendations for the feasibility study, we did put a line item in there that they needed to increase their special event from a net of $300,000 to a net of $1 million over the next 2 years. And we gave stair-stepping recommendations about raising 500,000, then raising 750, and then the third year would be $1 million. That would help to support their overall efforts. Then we looked at how to integrate. Do we integrate our annual ask and capital? So that's a different topic, but I would be happy to talk to any nonprofit who is interested in a comprehensive campaign and how to put that together with annual and capital as well. But I think you have to look at all of those items. You have to look at your annual support, your corporate, your foundation, your board of directors, your past board, your top 10 donors. I mean, just looking at your top 10 donors, regardless of if they're individual, corporate, or foundation, I think you've got to look at each one of those. What did we do right the last few years? What can we do better? And then put together a call plan, and then ask one of those volunteers who we talked about a few minutes ago to help reach out and to help set up the appointment, and then be part of the solicitation process. The director of development, the CEO, and that volunteer. And 3 people going and calling on a donor is not a problem. Have roles for each one of you, and also practice before you go, so you know what each one is going to do and who's going to make the solicitation.
Don't go in and wing it, right?
I certainly don't wing it. There's no meeting I go to, Ruth, that over the 37 and a half years I've been doing this, there's never been a meeting that I go to that I don't have in my mind what an objective or an outcome might be. So plan ahead. Know what you're trying to accomplish. Have roles, each one of you. Be flexible. Be comfortable. Know what you're talking about. The more you know what you're talking about, then you're having a conversation with the donor. You don't want to sit there, and I see this all the time happening with nonprofits, executives, and CEOs. You give 2 seconds of silence, and they feel like they've got to talk again. So listen. I mean, 90% of fundraising for me is listening to the donor, asking open-ended questions, having a conversation, leading that donor to where I hope to be, what my hopeful outcome would be, but also being flexible in the conversation to know when it's appropriate to ask for the gift. And maybe this day is not going to be asking for the gift, but I'm going to be following up, gathering more information, and then the next visit will be a request.
As always, you give us great advice, great insight, and you've kicked us off into this new year. So thank you, Dr. Philanthropy.
Thank you, Ruth. I'm glad to be here, and Happy New Year to all of our listeners.
And thanks for joining us for KC Cares. It's Kansas City's nonprofit voice, and we're produced by a nonprofit that's called Charitable Communications. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. And KC Cares, you can find out more information, fundraising opportunities, how to come on the show at kccaresonline.org. And spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio, and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. And don't forget, you can catch us Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thanks for joining us on KC Cares.